Good night, stranger. It is getting dark outside, and you have traveled a long way already. You should take shelter for the night, before you are unable to see your feet. I invite you into my den, so you can spend your night safely without any worries. I will even tell you a fairy tale, so you can fall asleep easily. Tonight's story is a famous one, first published by the Brothers Grimm in 1812, and you surely know it as Snow White. There are several places in Germany claiming to have connections to the origins of the tale, mostly for tourism reasons. One that I have visited actually is Bad Wildungen in Hessen, where I spent Christmas many years ago. I just thought so long about what Hessen is in English, and then I realized it's literally the same word. Anyway, in 1533, Margaretha von Waldeck was born as a daughter to the Count of Waldeck-Wildungen, and she was known to be very beautiful, and then later sent away by her father and her stepmother, traveling through the Siebengebirge or the Seven Hills, which is another very lovely German landmark that I have visited. And she also died very young. So these are the parallels to the fairy tale that have mostly led to the connections that have been proposed in literature. This is why I took the freedom to set this bedtime story in the 16th century, even though these are mostly assumptions and scholarly hypotheses. There's no actual proof that Snow White is based on that woman. Maybe I should go back to all these places and film a video for you guys once I have more money and time, I guess. So yeah, follow me on Patreon. I'm joking. But thank you to Elwin and Asasia, who are supporting me on Patreon and Substack, respectively. I kind of feel like Michelangelo, except I'm not a generational talent, and my patrons aren't the Medici, but they are these amazing women who are listening from somewhere across the world and supporting me, so thank you guys. Now, before we begin, if you still have the device you are listening on in your hand, make sure to prepare everything for sleep. Turn off autoplay if you are watching on YouTube, or turn on a sleep timer if you use one. You can also drop an intention in the comments. Leave me an "I will fall asleep easily" comment to claim a restful night for yourself. And without further ado, let's start. Now you may find a comfortable position to lie down and close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. I want you to think of 3 things you were grateful for today. Maybe the sun was shining. Maybe you saw something beautiful. Maybe you shared a moment with a loved one. Allow yourself to be grateful for the small things. Concentrate on your breath again. Every time you inhale and exhale, feel the air flow under your nose. If there are thoughts coming up, look at them like you would look at a cloud in the sky and watch them pass by. With every exhale, your body relaxes deeper. Your feet become heavy. Your legs become heavy. Your shoulders become heavy. Your arms become heavy. Your hands become heavy. And your head becomes heavy. I am now going to count down from 5, and when I reach 1, you will be completely present in tonight's story. 5. You are safe and relaxed where you are in this moment in time. 4. A warm and cozy light spreads from your heart throughout your body, its golden glow filling you with a feeling of love and solace. 3. You let go of everything that is still binding you to today. 2. My voice is leading you through the light and beyond. Your body disappears, and you feel nothing. 1. You can see a section of a large stone room with high ceilings and a dark red runner on the floor. The flickering light on the wall indicates that there must be some kind of fire in the room, but you cannot see the source. There's movement, the rustle of fabric, and then a woman approaches you, clad in a gold-colored brocade gown embroidered with fleur-de-lis, matching in color with her strawberry blonde hair that is pulled back in a complicated updo and crowned by a pearl-studded golden headdress that flares around her head like a halo. Her face is framed by a broad white ruff. Over her dress, a dark vest with golden ornaments is draped, and around her neck and from her fingers hangs heavy gold jewelry of exquisite craftsmanship. As she approaches, you look into her face that makes her appearance somewhat ageless, with round brown eyes and a small mouth. You can't deny that she is beautiful, her intense countenance conveying a confidence that enhances her looks. She opens her mouth and calls, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" Pictures appear in your mind of women and men, children and adults in rapid succession. But only one stands out to you above the others, a young woman with a rosy glow to her cheeks and lips, painting a pretty contrast to her otherwise very light skin. Her eyes are wide and dark, with long lashes, making you think of a doe, and they match with her hair, almost black, like ebony. Everything about her seems soft and rounded. The waves of her hair, the tip of her nose, and the curve of her shoulders. Automatically, like someone has planted the words in your conscience, you answer, "Queen, you are full fair, 'tis true, but Snow White fairer is than you." And you know that what you are saying is the truth. "That's enough!" the queen's voice echoes through the hall, her beautiful face twisting in anger, turning it ugly. "I've been listening to your nonsense since Snow White was 7 years old. How can she be more beautiful than me? I cannot bear it anymore. It's time I do something about it." Pacing up and down the length of the room, she yells, "Guards, bring me the huntsman, and quickly." You watch her furrowed brows, the crease in her forehead, and her crossed arms. A short time later, a man in green breeches and a matching shirt enters the room, tugging at his brown vest that is askew as he tries to be presentable in front of the queen. He bows deeply, taking off his felt hat in a smooth motion. "Your Majesty, you have called for me," he says, sounding nervous. "Listen to me well. the queen says, and he straightens up as she acknowledges him. You will take Snow White into the woods. I never want to see her again, so you will kill her and bring me her lungs and her liver as proof. You can see the huntsman gulp, horror spreading over his face. Yes, Your Majesty, he confirms quietly. Then he leaves without another word, and the queen departs shortly after, leaving you to ponder over the situation at hand. Your curiosity gets the better of you, and you decide to look into what the huntsman will do, since only looking at Snow White's image earlier has you attached to the young woman. You spread your mind out beyond the confines of this room, tracking the movement in the castle. The queen in her chambers, the servants walking the halls, the staff in the kitchen preparing for the next meal. Then you sense the huntsman, who is just now stepping into the courtyard with Snow White in tow. She is following him attentively, big eyes taking in every detail around her, as the huntsman leads her through the castle wall and toward the woods. Admiring the flowers, trees, and watching the birds, Snow White doesn't notice the huntsman drawing his cutlass from his belt at first. But as she turns around, the smile on her face dies, and fearful tears spring to her eyes. Please spare me, she cries, and you can see the huntsman's determination wavering, now that he is looking in her eyes. I can't, he replies, sounding dejected. If I do not kill you, your stepmother will punish me instead. Please, Snow White pleads, staggering backwards. I shall go into the forest and never return. No one will know that I am still alive. The huntsman closes his eyes briefly, and when he opens them again, he says with a stern voice, Go. Because she doesn't react right away, he raises his tone slightly. Go, before I change my mind. You watch Snow White scramble into the woods, and the huntsman, weapon still in hand, slays a wild boar instead, that, startled by the noise, jumped out of the thicket. But you follow her, running between the trees where there's no path, just bushes and shrubbery pulling on her long blue skirt that she is lifting up with her hands. At some point, Snow White starts to slow down, breathing heavily and turning around. She looks lost, but there's no way out of the woods. So she keeps going, over rough stones, passing thorny brushwood, and animals like deer, bunnies, and boars jump out of her way. When she is starting to look so tired that she can barely continue on, the sun steadily sinking and the shadows of the trees becoming longer, she reaches a clearing with a small cottage. Snow White approaches it carefully and politely knocks on the low wooden door. As no one answers, she gently nudges the door with her hand, and it swings open easily. The inside of the house is dim, and everything looks very small. A little table is decked with 7 plates, smaller than any of the plates in the castle. The spoons placed next to them no bigger than teaspoons, and forks and knives just as small. Snow White, with her face flushed from the day of running through the woods, takes one look at the vegetables, bread, and drinks on the table, and reaches for the plate closest to her, taking a bite and a sip from the small cup. Then she halts, and her brow furrows. I shouldn't eat all the food from one plate, or one person will be left with nothing. Instead, I shall eat and drink a little bit from every plate and cup," she mutters to herself, and does just that. After completing one turn around the table, Snow White yawns, covering her mouth with her delicate hand. She steps away from the table, and you see 7 little beds lined up against the wall of the cottage, all neatly covered in white linen sheets. Snow White lies down on the first one, but after a bit of tossing and turning, she seemingly decides that it is not to her liking, and moves on to the next bed. This one is too short, so she tries out the other beds too, until the last one in the corner of the room is left. When Snow White's head touches the pillow, she falls asleep right away. You watch over her as she sleeps, and it doesn't take long until 7 lights appear outside, bobbing up and down in the dark of the night. The door to the cottage opens, and 7 men enter. They are very short and carry little lamps, their heads covered with pointed hats. As all of them shuffle through the door, the first man stops, looking around suspiciously. "Who sat on my chair?" he says, noticing the displaced wooden legs. The second man says, "Who ate from my plate?" The third, "Who took my bread?" The fourth, "Who ate my vegetables?" The fifth, "Who used my fork?" The sixth, "Who used my knife?" The seventh, "Who drank from my cup?" Then the man who spoke first turns around and exclaims, "Who lay in my bed?" A huge mess breaks loose, with all of them calling, "Someone has laid in my bed too! In mine too!" Finally, the last man steps closer to his bed in the corner and gasps, "Come here! Someone is lying in my bed!" They gather around the bed, looking down on Snow White, and one of them squeals, "My goodness, she's so beautiful!" "Let's let her sleep," another one suggests. "I don't have the heart to wake her when she's sleeping so peacefully." Everyone nods in agreement, and they quietly slip into their own beds, with 2 of them cuddling up in the bed next to Snow White. You doze off yourself when the lights turn off and everyone falls asleep, but your mind stays in the little house. As the sun rises again in the morning, Snow White's eyes flutter open. She squeaks when she notices the men, some of them already pottering about the house, while others still lie in their beds. 7 little heads turn toward her, and the men approach her tentatively, moving slowly like they are trying not to scare away a wild animal. "Who are you?" one of them asks, the one the first bed belongs to, and who seems to be the leader of the group. "I'm Snow White," she says shyly, getting up quickly and smoothing out her dress with her hands. "And who are you?" "We are the 7 dwarves," the man replies. "How did you get into our house?" the second dwarf asks, nervously wringing his hands over his dark blue shirt. Snow White sighs and then tells them the truth, that her stepmother ordered to have her killed, and that she had to flee the castle. The dwarves all look something on the spectrum from shocked to worried, and the smallest of them asks her with big eyes, "If you want, you could stay with us. We have to work in the mines all day and don't have much time for household chores. So if you keep the house for us during the day, you could stay in exchange." All of the dwarves nod in approval. "I would love that," Snow White says. "With all my heart. I'm so grateful." The dwarves get ready for work, putting their little hats back on, and before they leave, the leader turns to Snow White and warns, "Your stepmother, the queen, is a powerful woman. She might find out where you are, so don't open the door for anyone while we are away." "Don't worry," Snow White replies. "I'm sure she will never find me here." You startle slightly, as suddenly the queen steps into your line of sight, ripping you out of your reverie. Her face is relaxed compared to how you saw her the last time, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Mirror, mirror on the wall," she calls, "who is the fairest of them all?" You sigh. You should have known the peace wasn't meant to last, and you already know that she is not going to like your answer. "Queen, thou art of beauty rare, but Snow White living across the 7 glen, with the 7 little men, is 1,000 times more fair." Her face crumples, and a high-pitched scream leaves her lips. "What do you mean? Snow White is supposed to be dead. I ate her lungs and liver that the huntsman brought me." For a second, you think she's going to punch you in a fit of rage. But a flicker in her eyes tells you that she, too, knows what you do. You always tell the truth. She starts stomping around the room, and it's like you can see her mind working behind the dark eyes that move around quickly. She walks to the corner of the room that you can't see and comes back with a modest white dress and a grey cloak, something a chandler might wear. She then approaches her workbench, where she grabs a container that looks like it has dirt in it and smears the contents all over her face. Taking off her jewelry and hairpiece, she now looks much more like an ordinary woman. But she walks over to a big book, flipping through the pages until she finds what she is looking for. Her voice rises with the incantation. "I am ugly. I am old. No one will recognize this face, but believe every word told." You can see the glamour magic crossing her face, but to you she still looks the same, the spell having no effect on you. Your mind follows her out of the castle and into the woods, walking over 7 hills until she reaches the house of the dwarves and knocks on the door. You can see Snow White sweeping the floor inside, and for a second you hope she will remember the dwarves' warning and not answer the door. But when the queen exclaims, "Fine wares to sell," Snow White puts the broom away and hurries to the window. "Good day, good woman. What do you sell?" she asks the queen with genuine interest. "Fine wares," the queen croaks, disguising her voice. "Laces in all colors." She pulls out a particularly beautiful, silky lace dyed purple and violet. Snow White makes an appreciative sound and praises the chandler's goods. Then she unlocks the door, letting the queen into the house. "I will buy it," Snow White says with a smile. "Come here, beautiful child," the queen requests. "What a lovely figure you have. But let me lace you properly. You will look even better that way." She quickly wraps the lace around Snow White's waist, pulling so tight that the girl's breath catches. Snow White tries to gasp for air, but nothing happens, and finally she stumbles and falls to the floor. The queen's face changes in an instant, from kind old woman to cold and uncaring. "Now you have done with being the fairest," she cackles and rushes away. You stay with Snow White in the cottage, anxiously watching over her until evening comes and the dwarves return. As the first dwarf enters the house, he gasps and scrambles to kneel beside Snow White. The others follow, just as concerned, and they turn her lifeless body around. "This is laced way too tightly," one of them yells, tugging at the purple corsage. Another dwarf gets a pair of scissors and cuts the lace open, while one of them rips it away. "She's alive!" the head dwarf exclaims, his hand hovering over Snow White's mouth, detecting shallow breathing. When Snow White's eyes open, a dwarf stands ready with a cup of water, while the others shake her slightly to keep her awake. "What happened?" they ask, and she still sounds dazed when she recounts the afternoon. "That old peddler woman must have been the evil queen," the youngest dwarf says, with others chiming in affirmatively. But you have no chance to listen to the rest of the conversation, because the queen is in front of you again, shrugging off her cloak and looking at you with fiery eyes. "Mirror, mirror on the wall," she yells, "who is the fairest of them all?" This time you don't hesitate before you answer. "Queen, thou art of beauty rare, but Snow White living across the 7 glen with the 7 little men is 1,000 times more fair." She closes her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath. Then a cruel calm spreads over her face, and she mutters, "This time I shall think of something that will ruin you at last." You see her handling some ingredients at her workbench, until she holds up a golden comb with a victorious cry. Then she disguises herself again, speaking a spell that makes her appear like a different woman from yesterday. "Poison comb," she mumbles. "I have really outdone myself this time." You watch as she returns to the cottage, knocking on the door and calling, "Good wares, fine wares." Peeking through the window, Snow White answers, "I'm sorry, but I'm not supposed to let anyone in." "Well, my child," the queen says, "you are not forbidden to look, though." She holds the golden comb up to Snow White and says, "Let me comb your hair with this. Look at it like a free trial." Snow White leans out of the window, and the queen reaches for her head. The second the comb touches her scalp, the poison acts, and Snow White tumbles to the floor unconsciously. "You paragon of beauty," the queen spits. "Now you are done for." As she leaves, you once again stay with Snow White, waiting for the 7 dwarfs to return. When the door opens and they see her on the floor, one of them yells, "The queen was here again! Quickly, let's search for what has happened." One of them pulls the comb out of her dark hair, and Snow White starts to move again. After telling the dwarfs what happened, they advise her to not let anyone in and not to talk to anyone through the window. Meanwhile, the queen storms into the room, approaching you like a mad woman and calling, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" "Queen, thou art of beauty rare," you say with a tired voice, "but Snow White, living across the 7 glen with the 7 little men, is 1,000 times more fair." Shaking with anger, the queen returns to her workbench, screaming, "Snow White has to die, even if it should cost me my own life." You watch her crafting an artificial apple, dipping it in poison. One side of the apple is dark red, the other light and yellow. "Everyone who eats a piece of this shall die," she mutters, dresses up as a farmer, and puts the apple in a basket. Then she travels over the 7 hills a 3rd time, and knocks at the door of the 7 dwarfs. Snow White calls from the window. "Sorry, I'm not allowed to let anyone in." "All right with me," the queen says. "I can still sell my apples somewhere else. But you shall have one as a gift." "No," Snow White declines sheepishly. "I'm not supposed to take anything either." The queen laughs at that. "Don't worry," she says. "There's nothing wrong with these apples. Look, I will eat a half of this one, and you can have the other." She eats the light half first, and as nothing happens, Snow White holds out her hand for the red half of the apple. At this point, you are a bit annoyed with Snow White. How can someone be so benevolent and believe that everyone around her is the same when they know that someone has it actively out for their life? As soon as she bites off a piece, she falls to the ground, and it looks like she is finally dead. Laughing, the queen says, "As white as snow, as red as blood, as black as ebony. This time the dwarves will not be able to revive you." With that, she disappears into the woods. Once she comes back to the castle, she asks you again, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And you answer sadly, "Queen, you are the fairest now of all." She doesn't bother you after that for a long time. You, however, watch as the dwarves return home and can't find any external cause for Snow White's predicament. They cry over her dead body. They talk about burying her. But when they lie out her body, some time has already passed, and she still looks rosy and alive, like she is merely asleep. "She is so beautiful," one of them says. "We can't bury her in the ground like this." So you watch them make her a glass coffin that they carry into the forest to the top of the 7th hill, where the animals assemble and cry over Snow White too. The glass coffin remains on the top of the hill, where it reflects the light of the sun as it rises and sets, shining like a beacon. And even as time passes, her body stays unchanged. You check up on the coffin from time to time, and usually one of the dwarves is guarding it, while the others are at work. One day, a prince travels through the forest, and as he reaches the dwarf's house, he sees a light emanating from the top of the hill. Curious, he makes his way up to the spot where the coffin lies, and as his eyes fall upon Snow White, he is visibly enchanted by her beauty. She should lie in the most splendid castle, so her body can be safe and protected, he says. The dwarves, who arrived at the top of the hill after spotting the prince, tell him, "We cannot give you the coffin for all the gold in the world. I have a royal mausoleum in my palace, where she will be protected by guards at all times, and you shall be able to visit her whenever you like." You can see the dwarves sticking their heads together, discussing quietly. Finally, their leader turns around and tells the prince, "Fine. It is only appropriate for a princess like her to have her resting place at a palace. Promise us to venerate and honor her like she is the most important thing in the world." The prince agrees, proclaiming, "Thank you so much. I would not be able to live peacefully without looking at her and knowing she is safe." With that, the prince's guards pick up the coffin and they carry it down the hill. On the way to his palace, one of the guards trips over a bush on the ground, shaking the coffin violently. You see something flying out of Snow White's mouth, and lo and behold, a piece of apple lies in the coffin next to her. None of the guards notice at first, but you see Snow White's dark eyes flutter open. She sits up, clearly disoriented, and pushes the cover of the coffin that falls to the ground and shatters. The guards stop at once, and the prince jumps off his horse when he sees her sitting up, ordering his servants to lower the coffin to the ground. "Where am I?" Snow White cries, looking around. The prince approaches her with a smile and says, "We are on the way to my palace, where you shall live as the princess that you are." Snow White blushes, and the prince lifts her on his horse to take her home. You keep watching them over the following weeks and are delighted to see that the young couple is getting engaged. The wedding is planned as a grand festivity, and every noble from the princess and the adjoining kingdoms is invited. This is when the queen decides to ask you again, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" "Oh, queen," you answer, feeling smug, "although you are of beauty rare, the young bride is 1,000 times more fair." Immediately, you notice the color draining from the queen's face, and a shadow of fear crosses her eyes. But you know her. You know that she needs to see the young queen for herself. And you are curious too, observing how the evil queen steps into the wedding hall and recognizes Snow White right away. You watch as the guards place red-hot iron slippers in front of her. Now that she is gone, it is finally quiet, and no one comes to bother you anymore. So you close your eyes and fall asleep. You become aware of my voice again. I will now count to 5, and once I reach the number 5, you will fall asleep. 1. You feel a comfortable and cozy warmth spread through your entire body. 2. Your muscles relax completely. 3. You feel safe and full of love. 4. Your mind is quiet and at ease. 5. You drift off into a sound and restful sleep. You are safe here in my witch's den.